Thank you. How's it going, New York? Yeah, it's good to be back. So, like Oliver said, my name is Brad Frost, and I have absolutely no idea what the hell I am doing. Thank you, Dave Rupert, for coming up with this beautiful title slide for me inadvertently. I think that we're a lot like this kid when we're just getting blasted in the face with more things than ever before, right? We have to make things that work on more devices, more device classes, viewports, browsers, environments, user settings. There's more technologies to use, more software, more tools, libraries, frameworks for us to choose from. And that's just to sort of keep us up to date with everything, we have to follow more blogs, more Medium posts, more pastry box posts, more Net Magazine posts, more tutorials, more podcasts, more conferences, more videos, more newsletters, more tweets, more opinions to pay attention to. All right? I think that the sort of funniest part about the scene is, the whole thing's funny, but that he's just sitting there, right? He's just sitting there taking it. Like, he doesn't have to be, right? But he's just like, who are you? Why are you doing this to me? But he has the option, right? And again, we are this kid. We have the option on whether or not we want to sit there and get blasted in the face by all of this stuff and continue to be overwhelmed and inundated with technology and decisions, or we can figure out a way to step away from the hose. So this is our reality now, right? This is, as web designers, this is what we are struggling with, right? We have all these different tools, all these different viewport sizes, all these different device classes. And this is sort of the promise of responsive web design, right? Now, all of a sudden, we could create these layouts, these sort of squishy websites that just sort of magically adapt their layout depending on whatever the viewport size is. And that's fantastic. And boy, do we have a lot of different viewport sizes we need to support now. But for whatever reason, even still to this day, 5 years later, responsive design just turned 5 years old, I still see a lot of this. I go, read some tutorial on responsive web design, and I see values like 320 pixels, which is an iPhone 4 in portrait mode, right? 480 pixels, iPhone 4 in landscape mode, right? 768 pixels, an iPad in portrait mode, right? 1024 pixels, an iPad in landscape mode. The Fold. Oh God, the Fold, right? all the time with that, right? But this idea, that there are such things anymore is just totally out the window, right? Samsung shits out a different size black rectangle every 30 seconds, right? And Apple's in the game now too, right? The iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, I love this GIF. It just sums it up so perfectly, right? So now we have values like 375 pixels for the iPhone 6 and 414 pixels, right? And now we have more powerful tools like SAS and stuff like that, and we sort of bake this language, right? Well, we need to make our sites work on phones and tablets and desktops, and so we sort of bake those into the language and our workflow. But Jason Grigsby, as he so eloquently puts so many things, he says, drawing a line around a specific device class has as much permanence as a literal line in the sand, right? It's selling the web short and what we do short by trying to put things into buckets and only caring about phones, tablets, and desktop machines, right? It's our job as responsive web designers to not just cater to the current crop of devices that's out there, but also recognize that, we just don't know, right? I don't know. The people who write at The Verge don't know what the devices next year are going to be, right? And what their viewport sizes are. So it's up to us to craft layouts that work well on any viewport. So I made a little tool called Ish. It's called Ish because whenever you hit the small button, it gives you a smallish viewport. You hit the medium button, it gives you a medium-ish viewport. And you hit the large button, it gives you a large-ish viewport. And you hit it again, and you get a different value, right? The idea, this isn't terribly practical from a development or design standpoint. This has everything to do with educating our clients, our stakeholders, our colleagues, that, yeah, you know, it's on us. We're not just making something that's going to look good on an iPhone, right? It's our job to make sure that we're making an experience that's meant to be beautiful and functional across any device, any viewport size that happens to access our site. Of course, there's that, and there's a client favorite disco mode. I threw this in here. It just bounces your screen around, and the clients, they look at it, and they're like, oh, look at it go, look at it go. And it is great, though, because, again, it's sort of helping them. It's a bit cheeky, but it gets the point across that, like, yeah, what we're trying to do is make an experience that's just totally bulletproof. No matter what viewport size happens to come around the corner, we're ready for it, right? And viewport's one thing, right? You know, but as we all know, right, this isn't the web anymore, even though we still sort of create on these sort of desktop machines, right? But now we have all these smartphones, dumb phones, e-readers, tablets, netbooks, notebooks, desktops, TVs, game consoles, all these other things that can access the web, right? And these things all have varying capabilities. And that's just what we're having to deal with now, right? You know, the watches, the smart fridges that you could go buy today if you wanted to. But again, what's more important than these things that exist today are these question marks, right? Nobody knows. Again, not those people at The Verge or Engadget or whatever. Nobody knows where the device and web landscape is going to be even a year from now. And yes, our experiences, yes, our browsers are getting more powerful. Yes, our machines are getting more powerful. Moore's Law is still very much in effect. But at the same time, there's two parts to Moore's Law, right? There's the technology itself increasing, faster processors, faster chips, all of that good stuff. But then there's also this idea of cheap devices. And we're starting to see this flood of cheap, good enough devices that Scott Jensen calls the zombie apocalypse of sort of these low, underpowered, good enough web-enabled devices. As Jeremy Keith so eloquently stated, that the web, whenever we talk about it in terms of a platform, we're putting it on the same level as iOS or Android or even something like Flash, right? This sort of binary, you either have it or you don't, right? But Jeremy says it's so important to understand that the web is a continuum, right? That across all of these different web-enabled devices, across all of these different technologies and browsers and user settings and whatever, there is a spectrum that we need to support. And that the web is actually very well equipped to deal with that. And this is why progressive enhancement matters so incredibly much in this day and age, right? So instead of starting with the sort of assumptions that we've always sort of had, like, oh yeah, of course the user has the latest version of Chrome. Yeah, of course they have, you know, JavaScript support, right? Of course they're on a wired connection, right? Of course we have their full attention. Of course they're on a large screen size, right? Of course they're on a capable, efficient input method like a mouse and keyboard, right? And making all those assumptions and designing and developing around those things, and then figuring out after the fact how to cram all that shit down into a small screen. Instead of that, we need to do what Luke Wroblewski has been talking about for years now, this idea of flipping everything on its head, embracing the fact that, you know, the mobile medium provides these constraints that are extremely healthy for us, and that instead of making all of these assumptions, maybe we should start off by saying, yeah, of course the user's on a small screen, on a shitty edge network, right? Of course they're on a really crude D-pad or touch screen, something that's more of a coarse input type, right? Of course they're hurried and distracted, right? And we solve our business goals, we solve our user goals, we solve our content goals at that most constrained environment. And then as screen space becomes available, as browser support becomes more available and features become available, we're able to take advantage of those and layer on enhancements, right? That is why progressive enhancement matters so much, right? And there's been this big sort of flood of MVC, really heavy-handed JavaScript libraries out there. And the thing is always, oh, well, nobody switches off JavaScript anymore and stuff like that. And that's true. Not many people are doing that. But at the same time, that doesn't give us a free pass to just all of a sudden just skip to the most fragile layer of the stack, right? Because you have to answer the question, right? What happens when things go wrong, right? And they will go wrong, right? And you have to answer those questions. Do you give your users a middle finger in the form of a spinner, right? That'd actually be a pretty cool one. Somebody make that like a little animated GIF, middle finger. Or do we provide them content and functionality, to the best of our ability, start at that base HTML level, layer on CSS enhancements, and then layer on JavaScript functionality. At the end of the day, for the most part, right, this idea of progressive enhancement, this idea of web standards, of starting with HTML and layering on CSS and layering on behavior on top of that is foundational work, right? HTML is ugly. I get it. Craigslist, right? Think about it, right? But it's like concrete, right? Concrete is pretty ugly. It's drab, it's gray, but at the same time, it's what allows us to have all sorts of great stuff built on top of it. So there's no such thing as designing a future-proof experience, right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that we could do to better prepare us for whatever's going to happen down the road, right? And if you think about it, and this is sort of a weird concept, right? The projects you're working on today are going to be interacted with on devices that didn't exist at the time you made them, right? And this is something that is happening increasingly, again, every day. Look at the new watches. This is really cool. This just came out a little while ago. This guy's demonstrating sort of, checking his Twitter feed on his watch or whatever, and, happens to go to a website I made a couple years ago. That's pretty cool, right? And so this dude can access a site, that we made a while ago before these watches were ever a thing, right? I wasn't coding up the website and going, oh, but these watches are going to be browsing this one day. But this is what we're talking about, right? Being future-friendly means embracing the unpredictability of the future, right? And whenever we're designing for an unknown future, we have to take better stock of what it is that we're actually producing, right? And thinking about things in terms of screens or pages anymore just doesn't really cut it. We have to sort of break things down to their component pieces. Anybody's Bootstrap or Foundation by Zerb, right? And who's using this stuff? And nobody, really? All right, yeah. Don't worry, I'm not judging you. Maybe I am. Right? So these things are great, right? Responsive design is hard, multi-device web design is hard, and here are these sort of solutions, these UI toolkits that we're able to sort of stitch together in any way that we want, and it's fantastic. And from a conceptual level, I'm totally on board with it, right? Yeah, let's make this sort of system of components, as Stephen Hay said, right? But this is my problem with these things, right? These things are tools, singular, right? Bootstrap is a tool. Whenever I watched sci-fi movies as a kid, I could never shake the thought out of my head of I guess if given enough time, we just solve fashion. We're just some guy's hey, I think we should just wear jumpsuits from now on. And everybody's sure, sold, right? Look at these happy people. They love it. But yeah, so obviously, humans are a diverse bunch, right? We have different needs. We have different wants. We have different goals and desires and all of that. So, whatever we think about, these tools that give us the answers, right? Here's what your drop-downs look like. Here's what your buttons look like. And we implement those, you're going to look substantially similar to the other sites that happen to be utilizing that same tool. All right, so Dave Rupert wonderfully summed up sort of what we need to be doing, and that's sort of creating tiny bootstraps for every client. He goes on to explain further. He says that these responsive deliverables, what we're delivering to our organizations, to our clients, to everybody, should look a lot like fully functioning Twitter Bootstrap style systems that are custom tailored for your client's needs, right? That custom tailored bit is the operative part of this sentence, right? It's up to us to craft our own design systems, right? And that's what's given rise to a lot of these front-end style guides and pattern libraries that have been released, right? Code for Americas is amazing, Salesforce, MailChimp, Yelp, right? Starbucks. And whenever you crack these things open, right, there's patterns like blocks 3 up, right? So here's a basic pattern that they're using throughout their interface, right? You could sort of resize the window and see how it works in a responsive environment, right? And at the same time, they're establishing this sort of shared vocabulary that they could use for all future things, right? Here's a featured list, right, with a thumbnail and a headline and an excerpt, right? Here's their data tables. Here's a really simple one with 3 columns that'll squish nicely onto small screens. But then here's one that's a little more complex. And how does that work in a responsive environment? All right? So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about these sort of interface design systems and how important it is to sort of deliberately build up an interface design system. It's I'm calling it atomic design, and it's basically a very, meant to be a very deliberate way to craft your own design system. It's sort of a talk in and of itself, so if you want to read more about it, you could, hey, buy my book for $10. So skipping over that. But just last week, actually, Google released updates to their material design language. And I absolutely love seeing this because this is exactly what we need to be doing, right? Again, we don't know if the stuff that we're designing and building today is hitting the mark 100%. It's sort of a cocky thing once you think about it, right? It's like you do it once, it's like, oh, it's done, it's solid, right? These systems allow us to sort of take them, implement them, learn from them, test with them, and roll all of that thinking, all of those sort of learnings from implementing this system and roll it back into the language itself. And that's what Google is doing. That's what loads of people are doing with these design systems. And again, I don't know where this system's going to go. I don't know how people are going to use it. So these pattern libraries, these design systems are becoming increasingly essential. I love this quote, right? Great minds discuss ideas, average mind discuss events, and small minds discuss people. I always thought that this was a Eleanor Roosevelt quote, but apparently it goes back a little further. So Henry Thomas Buckle. So I will take this quote and commandeer it. It's actually pretty exciting to see exactly what you're going to look like in 15 years. It's the power of Photoshop right there, guys. But yeah, it's this whole idea that, great minds think about principles, average minds discuss technologies, and small minds discuss tools, right? Do me a solid. Who's like a visual designer who uses Sketch? Okay. Where are my Photoshop people at? Right? Okay, wow, that's quite a few of you. What about front-end devs? Who's using Sublime Text? Who's using Say Something Else? Right? So, we're going to play a little game called Gangs of New York. Reach under your seat. There are cleavers and butcher's knives, and we are going to murder each other over our tools, right? And it's this idea. We get into these habits of sort of overemphasizing the importance of tools, right? What grid system do I use? What editor do I use, right? What tool is the right thing for the job, right? Front-end framework, jQuery or no jQuery, Angular or Ember, right? And we get in these battles, native versus web, right? And really what we need to do is really take a step back. But I get emails all the time from design students and developers who are just like, please help me. What languages should I learn? What framework should I use? What tools should I use? It's sort of understandable though, because you looked at like a job posting site recently, right? And ever look at a job listing? It's crazy. So I will use this stage to, things have been going pretty well for Brad Frost Web LLC. So I'm thinking about maybe ramping up my staff. So I have a job opening for you. And you guys are smart and coming to a conference like this, so maybe I'll hit some gold. So you must demonstrate proficiency in the following. HTML5, mustache, handlebars, blade, jade, twig, bootstrap, foundation, material, design, CSS3, Sass, Less, Max, O, CSS, BEM, jQuery, Angular, Ember, Meteor, React, Backbone, Ember again just in case, Node, Espresso, CoffeeScript, Ice CoffeeScript, Java, Cappuccino, Cordova, PhoneGap, Git, SVN, TDD, MS SQL, Oracle, MongoDB, NoSQL, MySQL, YourSQL, RSQL, HerSQL, AWS, Hadoop, .NET, ASP, Python, PHP, Ruby on Rails, Drupal 7, Drupal 8, Django Unchained, WordPress plugin development, Joomla, Perch, CQ5, Photoshop, Sketch, Macaw, Frunt, Adobe Edge Reflow, Adobe ImageReady, Adobe InDesign, Balsamic, Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Paint, and a whammy bar. If you fit those requirements, Brad Frost Web LLC is eager to see what you have to offer our cutting-edge global workforce. Starting salary is a competitive $15,000 a year, and perks include casual dress and a ping pong table. No recruiters. Right? No shit, these are emails I got last week. Do you know any React.js experts? I went on React.js's Wikipedia page, and its first stable release was literally 4 months ago. Right? Again, this infatuation with tools and specific technology. Right? And again, another thing, I just got asked to answer this question on Quora. Right? As a front-end engineer, should I be aware of all the problem-solving algorithms to pass large company interviews? Right? Like sort of bubble sorting and all that crazy shit. Right? And it's tough. It's really, really tough. Jen Simmons recently on her absolutely wonderful Web Ahead podcast was talking about this. She says, when I'm trying to learn a new technology, it's easy to Google and look at a tutorial and read some code. What's really, really hard is to wrap my head around why I want to use which thing. That's frequently the thing that's not well explained and not well documented. So this idea of understanding the underpinning reasons of why certain technologies are helpful and useful are so insanely important, but that's not what we focus on. We focus on this torrent of frameworks and GitHub repos that sort of multiply like horny rabbits, right? So it's about principles, right? And these are, I call these my principles of adaptive design, right? What I want to focus on is, are the things that I'm making, taking advantage of the ubiquity of the web, right? Are they flexible? Are they performant? Are they taking advantage of the unique capabilities of the browsers and device that they're being experienced on, right? Are these things built to last? Am I thinking about the future, right? So what do we do, right? What do we focus our efforts on, right? We all have a certain skill set, and we always can be learning more. Are you guys familiar with this whole idea of being T-shaped, right? Sort of like a T-shaped skill set, right? So you sort of have like a breadth of stuff that you're aware of. It's sort of like your periphery, right? But then you have an area where you're particularly skilled in. And I think that this is a nice, sane way to sort of embrace this idea that we don't know everything, right? Maybe we I'm, as a front-end developer, I'm sort of, the stem of my T might be HTML and CSS. Or maybe somebody else's, that's part of the top of the T, right? I was thinking about this, though. I was just like, T's sort of, if this were a table, it would be like, fall over, right? So really, what we need to do is this, right? This is getting some T-shaped individuals together to work on a project team together, right? Having complementary skill sets that all sort of allow you to, as a whole, be stronger and more stable. In order to accomplish this, we have to kill this sort of idea of the waterfall process. I like pointing out that this guy is wearing business casual, dressed up for the occasion. But you know what I'm talking about, right? The waterfall process. UX designers in here, yeah? So yeah, all right. So you're making wireframes, right? Generate a 300-page PDF, and we present that to the client, and they're like, sure, it looks good, I guess, yeah. And then, that gets signed off, and then you hand it off to the visual designer. And, and then they apply color and typography and texture and all of that, and we put it in front of the clients, and they're like, ooh, I don't know, can we make some changes here? Sure, we'll just go back and we'll do a V2. And then we come back, and they're like, I like this. And we were, okay, well, we'll do a V3. And then they're like, okay, I like a little bit of that, but it could be from version 1. And so eventually, once homepage _final _V2 _for review _final _for dev review _final this time _final all uppercase .psd gets approved, right? Then the visual designers quietly tiptoe over to the code cave and slip the designs under the door. And as they run away, they're like, get that done in 2 weeks. We're already behind budget, schedule, right? And the developers, come out of their cave, and they're like, this is all wrong, all right? So, as a front-end developer, I suffer from serious identity crisis. At all the places I've worked, they're like, oh, what do you do? It's like, well, I write HTML and CSS. Oh, you're a coder. Go over, sit by those Ruby folks. Whip us up some gems. And I'm like, can you, how long is it going to take to write that middleware for us? And I'm like, my mom's an art teacher. I've never had a computer science class in my life. I don't know what you're talking about, right? I think it's so incredibly, essentially important to design for this future, to design for this multi-device web landscape, to treat front-end development as a critical and key component of the design process. Right? Raise your hand if at your organization, designers and developers sit right next to each other. It's good. Happy to see that. Raise your hands if designers and developers sit on the same floor. Raise your hand if designers and developers are on separate floors. Raise your hand if they're in separate buildings, in separate cities, in separate countries. Right? This is a huge freaking deal, right? And we can't get past this with those types of organizational barriers in place, right? A proper process, a sound process. Again, what this process assumes is that each one of these pieces has all the answers. And we don't. We just don't know everything, right? We don't know what the hell we're doing. And it requires all of us working together and actually communicating and collaborating with each other, sitting next to one another, smelling them for hours at a time, right? It's stuff like that. It's uncomfortable. It's sort of unnatural, but at the same time, it's absolutely necessary for good work to be produced, right? This takes everybody. This is at my uncle's chiropractic office. I'm like, oh my God, that is going in my slides, right? But it's not just, it's not just, again, like our own cross-disciplinary teams. This requires all of us, right? And I absolutely love working on the web and hope that you all do too, because, we, the people that make the web, are the ones that understand its power, that understand that true sort of collaborative nature of sharing knowledge, of being open, right? So I highly encourage you to blog, right? Write on your Medium site. Find ways to share bits of your own design process. Share case studies. Share data. Share tips and tricks. Share photos of your works in progress. Ask questions on Stack Overflow. Answer questions on Stack Overflow. Put together little proofs of concepts or prototypes. Contribute to documentation. Submit browser bugs. Share your stuff on GitHub. The beauty of the web is that it's this big, messy thing, and whenever you visualize it in this way, you quickly learn that no one has all the answers. There are no experts. There are no rock stars. There are no ninjas. There are just people that have pieces of the puzzle, and it's up to us to continue to share and reach out and help one another actually accomplish this stuff. I absolutely, absolutely love this graph. As Simon Wardley recently produced this, you sort of go through this process of, I don't know anything, and it's true because you're just starting. And then you get ramped up, and then you have this false sense of security. And then as time goes off, you realize that there's a hell of a lot more you don't know. So I don't know anything. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, and neither do you. And that's okay. The web is one giant puzzle that we just happen to lose the box to. And it's never going to be fully complete, right? And we spend hours organizing all the blue sky pieces, and then your toddler comes by and eats a couple, right? And then some jagoff comes and throws about 1,000 new pieces onto the puzzle, and they're like, here you go. Now this is part of the puzzle, right? But, does that mean that we don't put the puzzle together? No. We should put the puzzle together, because even though it's never going to be done, you could start to see that progress happen. You could start to see that beautiful picture start coming together. And puzzles are a hell of a lot of fun. Thanks.